Thank you for being an attentive audience and for joining us for this session. So we're going to talk about education and training, and this session is an interactive panel on education and training, developing human talent to achieve GCC visions. Now, with all the exciting developments happening in the region, it's very important that the workforce can actually contribute positively to achieving these objectives. So we have an excellent panel of very experienced professionals who have been operating in the region and understand precisely what's going on. They will be sharing their experiences and we'll let you know what's happening over there. So I'd like to welcome on board. Welcome to all our panelists, and I'd like to introduce who we have. We have Saeeda Ahmed, who is founder, Education Partnerships UK. Hello, Saeeda. Saeeda is the founding director of Education Partnerships UK and provides holistic education and business solutions to national and international clients. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Anna Yerokhina, who is Director, International Stakeholder Engagement at Pearson, and she has an extensive experience in developing and delivering international programs and working with governments, private companies, and charities. In her current role as Director, International Stakeholder Engagement at Pearson, she's led a number of education and workforce development projects globally. Welcome, Anna. And our final panelist is Matthew Anderson, Managing Director of TVET UK, who has more than 25 years experience in education, training, and qualifications in the UK and internationally. And he joined the organization in August 2007. Welcome, Matthew. Right. So thank you, and thank you all for taking the time to join us. And I'm sure our audience is looking forward to hearing from you and sort of your views and what's happening in the education and training sector in the GCC. So shall we start by maybe each of you has a few minutes to talk about yourselves, your organizations, and sort of your contribution to education generally and what you've been doing in the region. Shall we start with Saeeda?
Thank you, Ed. I've been working on education and economic development solutions now for 20 years. I'm not going to own up to more than 20 years, so that's the max for the rest of my life. And I actually realized as a young woman growing up in the UK that actually the education system is fragmented and it doesn't talk to each other. And then once the education system is over, you've got similar issues when trying to join the labour market. And through my various programs I designed for universities in the UK and colleges, as well as working with awarding organisations, when I went out to the Middle East in 2007, and particularly the GCC countries, I realized that we were trying to make a square peg fit a round hole, and it wasn't. There was cultural differences in learning. There was issues, various other issues. So we designed bespoke solutions that could actually help each of the countries, not just in terms of education, but training and vocational skills that would help them within their local labour market, which is particularly pertinent now in terms of the growth of their economies in alternatives to the traditional sectors. So what I'm looking forward to do is to talk about the opportunities between the UK and the Gulf countries in terms of our mutual educational opportunities, as well as some of the risks that come without doing it properly.
Right. And which countries in the GCC have you been active in, or are you active in at the present time?
At the moment, we're not actually active in the GCC countries specifically because of the COVID situation. But in terms of the past, it's been Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, very little in the Emirates, and a little bit in Oman.
Right, excellent. Anna, if we may come over to you as well. I mean, I know your organization quite well, and have met your organization at many of the, if you like, education events that we've organized there. So I know you're very active in the space. If you just want to sort of tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your contribution and sort of your view on what's happening in the region at the moment, that would be great.
Thank you, Ed, and delighted to be here. Thank you, everyone, once again. So, as far as I am concerned, as well as Saeeda, we're not discussing ages. So when we look at 20 years experience, it doesn't feel relevant to both sides or myself, I think. I actually, started my career in international relations, and that has been my kind of career journey to date. I graduated with the international relations degree. I've done quite a lot of work on different sides of the international relations, be it the United Nations, then have done some work with the Royal College of Surgeons, and in particular developing the surgical education and training around the world, including Gulf in particular, the countries like Oman, Bahrain, UAE. And it's a mixture of, if you like, the high-end education, because surgical would be the highest one of the medical. And then in Pearson, have been doing the work on defining the learner outcomes for all our product portfolios, then looking in particular into the workforce solutions around the world, but with specific focus on GCC and Asia Pacific in the last 5 years in particular. So when it comes to Pearson individually, and I think as well as collectively the sector looking at work skills, I mean, for Pearson itself, we are in the region for more than 20 years of very active work. Of course, our brands have been there for longer, but in terms of the physical presence, we have an office both in UAE, in Dubai, and in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh. And when it comes to work skills, we support education and work with in partnerships with governments, local providers, and kind of corporate sector on either delivering the qualification, so more of a traditional span of, if you like, technical, vocational, and all the opportunities and challenges associated with it. So have been involved in the reforms on the transformational level, as well as delivering the programs in the schools and the colleges. But it's also considerably more looking at the demand in GCC in particular. And as Saeeda kindly said, it's global standards, but locally relevant. There is no one solution, even for the GCC. What is relevant for Saudi Arabia is not as relevant for Oman. So our expertise is looking at particular current visions. So, you take either Saudi Vision 2030 or Oman Vision 2040, and matching the industry priorities and skills gaps against the solutions current, as well as, the developing ones, to achieve the country's objectives. And I think that's where UK and GCC are really strong, is understanding each other's needs, but then working towards bespoke solutions for our partners and friends in Gulf. Thank you.
Fabulous, thank you. And if I may come to you, Matthew, as well, just to sort of give your perspective before we delve deeper into the subject.
Yes. Same sort of background, 20 plus years in international development for education. TVET UK was set up as a trade association helping UK providers like Pearson and colleges and things out into the region, but also into Central Asia, Africa. So we had a global reach. Obviously, we did an awful lot around that. And personally, before TVET UK, I worked for City and Guilds, and we worked with the forerunner of Pearson, EdExcel, with Gotabot, looking at the reform of vocational education in Saudi Arabia, sort of 2004, 2005. They morphed into TVETC and so on and so on, so the names that you see today. So TVET UK's job was to get people in and to help smooth their ride into different markets. But in about 2015, 2016, we decided to go another way, and we started to work in project finance. So over the last few years now, we have sort of gone, I guess, up and down the sort of the vertical of international education development, in that we're now brokers, I guess, of international financial products as well as the training itself. So we have a roster of colleges, awarding bodies, training providers, and also finances. So less relevant in some of the Gulf countries, but more relevant probably outside in the Middle East to other ones where we're able to bring the finance with us to do these projects. But again, the principle is still there. We are there to help people into these markets. Obviously, the last year has not been ideal for us, and we've switched a lot to e-learning now, and that's one of the interesting things now when you look at the culture of the GCC, and it's, if you like, the willingness to accept e-learning or online learning or less formal learning than a degree, a PhD, a master's. So yeah, interesting times, but yes.
So when we've spoken, like even now picking up from you, it seems like one of the things that the region is facing at the moment is the skills gap. So I think I'd like us to maybe spend a little bit of time talking about the skills gap. Basically, I mean, what is it? Where is it prominent? Is it like right across the region? And of course, I mean, how can it be closed? Shall we start with maybe yourself, Matthew, on this one anyway? What are your experiences in this area and solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the major thing is that, I mean, it's not a secret that the certain Gulf countries have prioritized higher education, have prioritized high prestige education, the big names, and from my point in the TVET sector, the vocational sector has always been a sort of second rate, or it's not been something that's had what the focus that it needed. Obviously, large expatriate workforce in many of the countries has clouded that now. But we've seen over the last few years, particularly, I think, look at Saudi with the colleges of excellence thing, there have been attempts, strategies and the like to try and redress this. But I'm not sure whether or not we've gone down the cultural route of having people accepting this now, whether that's the individual students themselves or maybe the people at the top. A degree from a prime university is always going to be better than a BTEC or an HND in the eyes of some people. But yeah, the skills gaps are very definitely in the big industries of the Gulf. So let's think tourism. I think most of the countries have got a nationalisation agenda, and tourism is in their general visions. There's also the manufacture of things. You go across the range of, say, Vision 2030, for example, and what Saudi Arabia wants to achieve. And if you look in the vocational area, there is a skills gap, and there is a problem in recruiting to that skills gap as well. People being interested in some of these things that are seen as sort of menial. So I guess that's one of the problems that we face. I guess also COVID has been a bit of an opportunity as well as a problem, because online learning really was not accepted. It really wasn't seen as something that's valid. Now, of course, over the last 14, 15 months, we've had no choice. So now there's a greater acceptance. So we're going in the right direction, I think. There's a lot of, as Anna was fed up with hearing me say, there's a lot of strategies around, but there's not quite as much action. There's not quite as much, let's train somebody. It's all, there's a lot of McKinseys and EYs and things providing reports, but there's not as much action on the ground.
Thank you. And I mean, what's Pearson doing in it's sort of helping to address this problem?
I think I completely agree with everything that Matthew has said. And I think, the strategic objectives have always been probably the most aspirational across the whole world in a sense of the visions and the way they were reflected. What we have been trying to do, but again, I'd like to reiterate that all the work that we can do it only in strong partnerships with local stakeholders. And that's the approach, number one, that we are taking. And, I'm sure all my colleagues are as well, is trying exactly from the strategic objectives, identify these gaps, which Matthew has alluded to, for example, like travel and tourism, but also other industries, which I want to talk a little bit about it, and then address them and link a job and career progression for an individual to and strategic objective of the country, because only in this way you can close the gap by having the government approval, having a destination for yourself as a career choice, and also removing the stigmas around the non-traditional educational routes. So let's look at also the sectors like Matthew has said about the travels and tourism. And I mean, don't forget also that the challenge as well as opportunity right now in GCC is the fact that the GCC combined GDP is much less dependent on oil and gas than it was 10 or 15 years ago. So if we look at the combined GDP, only 40% of it in GCC roughly is oil and gas dependent. So it's moving towards services or other, sectors in the economy massively. So these are the 60% and growing other opportunities. So the other sectors are, of course, if you look at travel and tourism, is creative. And that's absolutely amazing to see, in particular in countries like the UAE, where they really foster the creativity in all forms. So the skills in performing arts, the skills in visual arts, and becoming the hub, if you like, for some cultural centers. The same equals for Oman, for example. Take a fantastic example of the Muscat Opera House and, all the curated programs that are going there. So Jordan. So looking at the performing and creative arts is the sector for us which we see growing, and the demand for it, and also it's very attractive career. The other sector to look at, apart from, of course, travel, is healthcare and well-being. And now here, if you look at the work skills, it's in particular the problem of shortages of community care workers, yes, those working on the ground, the light health professionals, those who are not doctors but are required to maintain primary care and post-care. And again, seeing it as a career opportunity is much more attractive way, and then transforming the stigma around technical and vocational, as well as, of course, everything related to infrastructure, but infrastructure in a new way. It's not just about building and constructing. It's about building a career of becoming a management in construction, or looking after a big infrastructural project, being it in a railway or building an airport or building a hospital. So what we are trying to do is also removing the stigmas about the fact that vocational doesn't provide career, it provides a job. No, it is your career choice. It supports the life learning, and it also allows you to go to higher education at any stage. So that's roughly how we'd like to look at it. And I think these new sectors will open much more opportunities for individuals, countries, and the UK GCC to work together.
Fabulous. Thanks. And Saeeda, if I may come to you as well, if you want to approach it from your angle too.
Okay, so I think one of the things that the traditional education sector, not just in the UK, but internationally, has failed is the non-traditional learners, or people who have additional barriers to access education and the labour market, women, young people, long-term unemployed, those that might have missed the chance first time round for whatever reason to have an education and then to rejoin. And that traditional sector, I can still remember that there was individuals that were at university with me that actually could not finish their degree because a bereavement may have happened in their family or whatever, and then they could not actually then get a degree. And because of the COVID opportunity, because I will call it an opportunity, I mean, at this moment in time, what you see is traditional industry, traditional economy, everything that's traditional has been disrupted, which means it's become a level playing field for those that have traditionally face disadvantage all the way through their education or their economic participation routes. So everybody has to now find a way to survive, to learn, etc. And I think with vocational and technical education, the mass opportunities that it creates is that, first of all, it's modular. So if there is a disruption, you still get a certificate for that particular year, which you don't with a degree. If you miss a year, you've got to find a way to kind of make the whole ship of all 3 or 4 years, whatever your discipline is, to kind of work its way around. The other thing is that my experience in the Gulf was really educational, because I think I went there with a group of experts. We had e-learning, and there was over £350 million worth of British educational software and technology that was developed in the UK. We took it across, and there was cultural differences in acceptance, like Anna and Matthew mentioned about e-learning. The stigma of certain vocations, like, oh, well, we couldn't possibly be a cleaner, or we couldn't work in retail because other expats were undertaking those roles, and that has changed quite considerably. But I think that the challenge also doesn't limit on its education. It's how does it transport itself to economic participation? And I use the term economic participation, not the job market or the labour market, because again, I think that the labour market, the traditional labour market, has failed women, has failed youth in many ways, because they don't fit in it. It doesn't necessarily fit in their lifestyles or their circumstances. So because of COVID, that digital economy and that digital space allows for entrepreneurship from home, running, even being a worker from home, teaching from your own institutes from home to audiences that you wouldn't normally be reached. Like if you wanted to teach in a remote part of Mecca or Medina or parts of Saudi Arabia, you would have to find somebody who was willing to travel there and to be able to understand Arabic and so forth. So now some of the traditional barriers have actually broken down, because we're all in this space and this COVID-related problems together, which means we are now finding, because there's COVID-related problems together, we are also finding post-COVID solutions together for all of us. So I really believe that we're in a space that has masses of opportunity to redress the balance of inclusion, of new opportunity, new growth sectors. There's a whole green economy around energy, around sustainable travel, around the halal economy, around so many spaces that are ripe for the Gulf region, if they're able to kind of look at how we can develop something which is, as Anna mentioned, locally relevant, but also internationally linked in. So you have the dimension of being a local citizen, but also a global citizen.
Excellent. Thank you. So let's talk about, so clearly there's a lot of opportunity in the region. I mean, I've sort of over time have understood the sort of significant investments which have gone into this sector from countries like, of course, Saudi Arabia and the rest of it. But from your point, are there like challenges you're facing? Are you getting like enough support like from the UK government in your operations over there? I mean, how is that going for you? Shall we start with Matthew?
I mean, for us, we have our relations with mainly, I would say, for Saudi Arabia now, it's mainly private providers or, should we say, government-related initiatives. So we're looking at specific projects with them. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the region as well, places like Oman and that we have links into the government there. We talk to them from time to time. We're pushing what we've got now. I was just going to say what Saeeda just said. I 100% agree with the opportunities that are here now, using things like e-learning, and obviously as UK PLC, we should be pushing that now much more, I think, than the previously, where it's been about universities and the higher education, and some emphasis on skills, but very much, we're still in a world where somebody needs a PhD or a bachelor's to teach English in a college, for example. But that whole thing now, where you can teach from home, where you can teach almost informal learning, is a real opportunity now for Britain, I think. So I think something that the government, I think, needs to look at in terms of what it's doing in the embassies to help promote that. I'm sure it is. I'm not first-hand linked into them, but our local partners in the Gulf are linked into the governments there.
Anna, a viewpoint on this as well?
I think on the challenges, the COVID, in terms of the challenges, I think restriction on travel has been the challenge for the business in terms of both, the closures of the education sector, which has proved, to be really challenging for, I think, everyone, and then supporting the teachers in a different way and help them embrace different teaching methodology, in particular in vocational, is easy and not easy at the same time, because it's, adopting also different practices on assessment and how you do this and everything else with hands-on. So, and it also has been challenging, of course, for the business, for us, and it has also been challenging to develop the new relationships, because of course everyone embraced the online, but there is we all know this, and all respective audience, I'm sure, on the UK and GCC side can't wait to get the borders fully reopened when we can meet each other and have open conversations, because the trust and relationship is the key vehicle as well as key challenge if you don't get this right. So I would say that, the opportunities as well as the challenges are very closely linked. Where there are really good relationships, we were able to strengthen and nurture them and support them. Equally, though, if you wanted to build something new, online restrictions, they can only do so much for you in approaching new opportunities. So be as creative as possible is, I think, what we've embraced, but also be patient and loyal and kind to the partners on the other side, because we have all going through the waves of closures, opening. So I think the challenge of just be even more patient despite business priorities is really important, because it is going to pay off, because it is through trust and the way it's built, and then kind of, the financial return will also come.
Sure. So if there's an investor or potential investor in the audience right now who wants to, of course, get involved in this particular space in education and training, what would you say to them? I mean, of course, you guys have been there. You're still there doing business. Shall we start with Saeeda then? I mean, what would you tell somebody sat there watching right now saying, okay, I want to get involved? What are the practical steps to get in there and actually be successful as well?
I think it's not just a straightforward putting money into something, but it's actually trying to understand what are they investing in, what are the challenges and opportunities in that space, and who are they partnering with? Because if you choose somebody who doesn't have the nuanced awareness and understanding of that particular region and within a country even. So, there's a difference between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. There's a difference between, for example, the eastern part of Saudi Arabia to the west part. So you have to kind of be aware of what you're going into and who are the people, who are the movers and shakers in that space. And then also in terms of putting enough money in for those things that you might not need to think of whilst you're in the UK. So, for example, when we were going into Saudi Arabia, one of the things we had was that there was a women's division and a men's division to the universities. So you need to literally take into account two of everything. So if you were going in there thinking, oh, well, we'll just do that, it's not just do that. You can't take a sticky plaster approach either to investment or to any type of development you're going to do in the Gulf region. You have to start from the space and see where that particular country or area is at, and look at what additional investment you might need for the intangibles, the things you haven't thought of because you take them for granted, for example, in the US or the UK, etc., and be prepared to put support into some of the systems development that will enable the smoother running and return on investment to happen, rather than creating something which you might just be putting a vehicle, plonking it in the middle of, I use the term desert, but without the necessary infrastructure and supplies that will allow the movement and growth of the funds that you've put in.
Excellent. Matthew, do you have some remarks on this as well?
Yeah. I mean, there is no shortage of money available to invest in these areas. The money, finding the money is not the problem. It's the individual case, the business case. And as I've said, if you could have the most desperately needed product that Saudi Arabia needs, but unless there's a cultural acceptance and a take-up and that type of thing, then it's not going to work as a business. Choosing a local partner is key. Obviously, they have to have the right connections and right. But you know, we've seen a shift now in the money going towards more e-learning related things. The appetite for bricks and mortar building, equipping, operating the sort of BOT is less than it was. We've seen that. There's still one Saudi client that we're talking about. They're still wanting to have a big name university come in, invest and build. So it's not going to happen because at the moment, financially, our universities are challenged, or the global universities are challenged. They're not going to invest in something. So money has shifted to online stuff. There's a lot of interesting stuff, and again, you know, going back to what Saeeda said, you can almost study in secret if you want. You could do your vocational courses online to a certain extent, and you don't have to then sort of, you know. But once you're accredited, once you're able to practice, then it's a different story then. So, yeah, investment in e-learning definitely on the up. Bricks and mortar maybe flattening out a little bit.
Do you see that changing post-COVID?
Yeah. The only thing to worry about is if we end up with a sort of COVID 23, 24, you know, we had another strain or another, but definitely there was a feeling, I think, that everything was going online, would never go back to the classroom as we were. But I think now, you know, certainly in the UK, as freedoms have started to return, we can very easily see a time when, you know, we're almost back to normal, I think. People want to go to an institution. They want the camaraderie. They want to be with others, like-minded people who are studying with them. It's not the same online. It can be done online, but it's not quite the same experience. And, you know, as somebody with, I think we were talking about ages, 20 plus years experience in this, I love my time in study, in university, and that sort of thing. And probably the one thing that I don't remember much of is the actual course that I did. It was all the life lessons you earned, and I think that's very important. I think that's got to come back, but it will come back blended. It will come back more effective, I think, because now you have the opportunity. You could sit in a remote village in Saudi Arabia now, and you could listen to somebody teaching from the UK just over a line, over Zoom, for example. You could use apps, you could use online programs and things like that. For example, now we've got all the British healthcare qualifications. One of the things that we've been asked in Saudi Arabia before was to improve the health service there, and the reason they wanted that was because they looked at and valued the UK service. Now we have that training, and now it's online. We can pump that straight into Saudi Arabia without or into UAE or any of the others without a problem. 18 months ago it might have been a bit more difficult because they would have wanted to see the actual people standing there doing the teaching. Now we can do it at scale. We could train 30,000 people in tourism almost overnight. It's there. You know, the programs are there. It's on. So yes, big opportunities coming in. Yeah.
Wonderful. Let's come to you, Anna, for wrapping up comments, your views on all of this, and of course your advice to potential investors who want to be in the region and to obviously see for themselves.
Thank you, Ed. So my first comment is in terms of investment, you're investing in skills for jobs. The closer you see the link between the skills solutions that you are investing in the jobs, the better return on this investment you will see. There is much less room now for the general online or digital education. The infrastructure in Gulf is really, really strong. So that is not the direct approach. What is the approach is if it can link to the jobs and careers, that's the way. And kind of having the tagline on skills for jobs is number one for me. And the second one would be Gulf is a fantastic area for the opportunity. Spend time on building the relationship, building trust, and getting to know the people you will be working with. It is an investment in human capital that can bring the highest return. So, but without understanding exactly as Saeeda was saying, Messi, without understanding who are you working with, don't bring and parachute an investment into the solutions if it's not the right one. So work locally fast, build the relationship, and then invest. your time investment is equally important as your financial investment. And I think it will be valued and get the return even more than just plugging money in. As Matthew said, there is no shortage of just kind of financial tools. And I think the final one, let's work together on making these opportunities happen. We equally have a lot to learn from our respective colleagues in Gulf. Let's celebrate their achievements in artificial intelligence, in particular in the UAE, where there is even a Ministry for Artificial Intelligence, and the way the digital infrastructure has been rolled out across Gulf, is very, very impressive. And we'd like also to, transform this way of thinking. It's only one way, bringing the kind of the solutions from the west of the world to the east. It's not like this. The world has changed massively. It's a joint partnership and it's a joint learning exercise. And let's approach it from this perspective. We learn, you learn, and everyone gains. Thank you.
Thank you. So unfortunately, this is all we have time for. I just want to say thank you for your time, for being such a wonderful panel, sharing your views, sharing your experiences. And I'm sure there will be people in our audience who will find value from it. Certainly education is a high priority area in the Gulf. So thank you. I hope one day we will be able to do something in the region itself physically when the situation permits. Thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Ed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.